Think about how much you love having sex. Now think about how much you would hate being a prostitute. So I took shovels, rakes, and implements of destruction and threw them in the back of this blue VW microbus. I can't believe I just quoted Alice's Restaurant. Actually, I paraphrased Alice's Restaurant. If I quoted Alice's Restaurant, I would have said, "We took half a ton of garbage, put it in the back of a red VW microbus, took shovels and rakes and implements of destruction, and headed on toward the city dump." That's a quote. I used Arlo Guthrie's words. But I said, so I took shovels, rakes, and implements of destruction and threw them in the back of this blue VW microbus, which is using my own words to convey Arlo Guthrie's meaning. That's the definition of paraphrase. But I'm not supposed to know that because I went to vocational school. I went to the tech school. I grew up in a great place during an awesome time. Scranton, Pennsylvania in the 1980s. And if you went to public school in Scranton, Pennsylvania in the 1980s, in 8th grade, you got a choice between two high schools. You could either go to Scranton Technical High School, which was the vocational technical school where you'd learn a trade, or you would go to Scranton Central, which was the college prep school where you would pursue academics, apply to college, and go on to college. In that time and place, we were heavily discouraged from going to tech and heavily encouraged to go to Central. They'd tell you that was the school for the druggies, that was the school for the dropouts, that was the dummy school. But the nice thing about going to tech was all those of us who made the decision to go there, we did not give two shits what them old people had to say to us. I get where they were coming from. They were only looking out for our future, and frankly, it's kind of easy to encourage people to go to college, right? You almost can't go wrong giving that advice, right? But you know what? As a kid, when I was going around Scranton, I'd look up on a bridge or something, and I'd see some guy with his welding equipment on with the sparks flying, you know, or there'd be a house under construction. I'd look up, I'd see the guys framing the house, working with their hammers, working with their saws. That called to me. That's what I wanted to do. That's how I wanted to spend my life and make my money. So I chose to go to Scranton Tech. I ignored the criticism. I ignored the resistance, did what I wanted, and to this day, I am grateful that I made that decision. It was the best career move I ever made. At Tech, they gave you half a day of regular school studies, reading, writing, arithmetic. And the other half of the day was spent learning a trade. And your first year there, they exposed you to several different trades. For example, there was a class called small engine repair, and I remember we all walked into the class, and they have these big shop tables, and the teacher came out with a lawnmower engine on a little platform, and he sat one down in front of each student. He said, "Those lawnmower engines don't run. I'm going to teach you how to troubleshoot, figure out why they don't run, and by the end of this class, your lawnmower engine will run." So the other day, my chainsaw went down. I was able to take it apart, look in there, and find one of the fuel lines was cracked. I was able to take the thing apart, replace the fuel line, and we're back in business. We also got exposed to metal shop, which I absolutely loved. In fact, that was the direction I wanted to go. I loved working with them big, heavy tools, using the lathe and welding and all that kind of stuff. I didn't take my career in that direction, but for a time, that was the way I wanted to go. But then, 30 years later, right, I left my hammer out in the yard. I dropped it, I lost it, and then I came upon it and found it was all rusty. Well, who cares? It's just an old hammer, right? Wrong. This is a hammer my son gave me for Father's Day. Look at that. World's greatest dad. What kind of dad would I be if I just let the hammer he gave me rot out in the yard, right? So I was able to take this thing, get it on a vise, clean it all up, polish the head, and then because I had wood shop, where really for the first half of the class, the guy just made you sand all the time. You know who I'm talking about, those of you that were there with me. I was able to sand the handle down, back down smooth, and hit it with some linseed oil and just restore this hammer. Just little handy things you can do around the house. In addition to those things, Tech also exposed me to plumbing, carpentry, electrician, electronics, typing, and computers. Computers in 1988. We were the only school in the entire school district teaching computers to our students. One of the math teachers, Mrs. Reap, I'll never forget her. In fact, I'm grateful to her. I think about her just about every day. She took it upon herself to write a grant, and she got funding to buy these 3 computers and handpick a couple of students and teach them how to program Pascal, which is a coding language for those of you unfamiliar with computer programming. Not only did I not want to be learning how to program computers, right? Remember, I wanted to be up on a bridge with that welding mask and the sparks flying everywhere, right? But I did not want to take another class with Mrs. Reap because although I liked her, this woman was tough. The school was non-smoking. She didn't give a shit. She smoked right in the classroom. She didn't take shit from the students, and she didn't take shit from her bosses. She was the only teacher in my whole career, in my whole time being a student, that would light up a cigarette right in a classroom and not even give a shit. And this woman was tough, and she was really smart. And in spite of the smoking, she was also in real good shape. There wasn't an ounce of fat on her, and she was an avid skier. She used to go away to like out west skiing and tell us about her ski trips. She got a hold of us. I think there were 4 people in the class, and then one of them couldn't get it, and we were down to 3. And she taught us the basics about computers and how to program computers. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, I was starting to get it. I was starting to understand it, and I could put instructions into this computer and make it do what I wanted to do. So one day, Mrs. Reap pulls me aside. You know, I don't think I ever told this story to anyone, come to think of it. But anyway, one day, Mrs. Reap pulls me aside, and she says, "You're applying to college." I'm like, "No, I ain't." She's like, "Yes, you are." She said, "You're good at this, and you got to go to college to pursue this." I said, "Look, man, the only reason I'm here is because the state of Pennsylvania makes me go to school. There's no way I'm voluntarily signing up for 4 more years of this, and I certainly ain't going to pay for 4 more years of this." So just like the guidance counselor did to me, she pulled a trick that I seem to fall for a lot. She said, "Listen, why don't you just make an application? See if you get accepted. If you apply and get accepted, you could always say no later." So like an idiot, I got an application for college. One. I begrudgingly filled out 1 college application. I did not want to go to college. I wanted to end school. I didn't even want to be in high school. And I remember one day I got home from school, and as I was walking to the front door, I see my mother, like with a big smile on her face, you know, waving an envelope. And I'm like, oh, shit, I got into college. So I go in and I tell Mrs. Reap I got accepted, and she's all happy. And I'm all unhappy because I see what's coming. I can't stop this train. I'm going to college. Now, if I had gone the other way, if I had gone the academic route, the intent would have been to apply and go to college, and I probably would have went to college, and I would have been like a lot of people getting to college, like, "Okay, I'm here, Grandma. Are you proud of me? What do I do now?" But because I went to tech, I found something that made me passionate. I found something I loved, and I found something that was a good match for who I am, for the way I think, and for what motivates me. And I pursued that as a career. And I think that's very, very important. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say, like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I can tell you that is absolute bullshit. You don't believe me? All right. Think about how much you love having sex. Now think about how much you would hate being a prostitute. So I went to the vocational school and ended up going to college anyway. But when I got there, I was very unprepared. I'm now surrounded with students who went to their college prep school. These were very smart kids. They all spoke multiple languages. They had all read all the classic literature. They had classes in calculus and trigonometry and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have any of that stuff. But then I went to my first programming class, and I was one of a handful of people who had ever programmed a computer before. The rest of these people had never seen it. Tech gave me an advantage over them, which is exactly where I needed the advantage in my major. Another incredible advantage I got by going to tech, I knew how to type. I had 3 years of typing under my belt. You younger folks might find this hard to believe, but when I started college in the late 80s, you could still hand in a handwritten paper. Like your professor would be like, "Oh, go write something about the cave allegory," or some bullshit topic like that, monads or some crap. And you got out a pen and a legal pad, and you actually hand wrote your papers and handed them in that way. Well, right around that time was when they put a stop to that, and they started requiring you to use word processors. Most of us used the application WordPerfect back then. Now we all use Microsoft Word. And I had a tremendous, tremendous advantage because not only did I know how to type, but Mrs. Reap taught us how to use a word processor. And I got to tell you, my fellow students struggled. I was able to get a job in the computer lab, and I got paid to teach these people who were smarter than me, who were better prepared for college than me. I got paid to teach them how to use computers. Now, their content might have been a little better, their conclusions might have been a little more insightful,
But I was able to type the thing up and whip it out and hand it in and get it in on time or even early. These guys struggled with that. That was another advantage that I got from going to tech. And a third advantage I got was engineering, right? Computer science, when you're a programmer, you're an engineer. You have to use design techniques, top-down design, stepwise refinement, object orientation, all that kind of stuff. Essentially, you take a big problem and you break it into a series of little problems, and then you solve each of those little problems, then you weave it all back together. That's how you write a computer program. Well, guess what? That's also how you wire a house. That's also how you put plumbing in a brand new construction, right? And then when you get that computer program up and running and it breaks, you have to troubleshoot it. Well, guess what? I learned troubleshooting back in small engine repair when that guy dropped a lawnmower engine in front of me and said, figure out what's wrong with that engine and get it running by the time this class is over. Did I struggle with philosophy? Did I struggle with calculus? Yeah, that stuff was foreign to me. They maybe had a little advantage over me in that. But I was an absolute rock star computer programmer. I was good at it. I was good at it because I had a 1-year head start on everyone else. I was good at it because Mrs. Reap was an excellent teacher and she taught me how to program a computer. And when it came time to graduate college, I had a job as a computer programmer lined up long before graduation even. In fact, I started the job a week before graduation. They offered me the job and they said, hey, can you start July 1st? I'm like, yeah. I said, but can I start earlier? They said, yeah, you want to start June 1st? And I said, well, I graduate May 30th, but I don't have any class the week before. Can I start May 23rd? They were like, yeah. So that was my start date. I started my job before I even graduated. I'm thinking July 1st, why am I going to leave money on the table when I can get out there and start working? After all my friends I graduated with were 4 years ahead of me, right? They'd all been working. But over this 30 years, the people I went to tech with, they also flourished. And I'm not here to tell you tech is better than Central or tech is better than some private prep school. But I am here to tell you that tech was a hell of a lot better than the critics wanted us to believe back in the 80s when we all chose to go there. My friend Daryl Matthews, he was put on this planet to be a mechanic. And he's had a tremendous career as a diesel mechanic. He gets to work on the most awesome, giant train locomotives and oil rigs and all kinds of stuff. And if those machines go down, there's millions of dollars riding on Daryl. Daryl's got to get out there and he's got to fix those. He's got to fix those engines. About 10 years ago, I jumped on Facebook and started reconnecting with people I graduated with, and I was absolutely blown away to see the landscaping work these guys can do, the carpentry, the kitchens and cabinets and bathrooms they're installing, the stonework. I got 2 friends that are amazing stoneworkers, all because of going to tech. And don't even get me started on the entrepreneurs. Now listen, if you're going to be entrepreneurial, college isn't really the place for you, right? If you go to college, it's to get a good job working for someone else who's an entrepreneur. And a lot of the people who I know that went to college prep course, they're doing great and they're making a lot of money, but they're working for someone. My friends who went to Scranton Tech, a lot of them are entrepreneurs and they're running amazing businesses. In fact, a buddy of mine came to stay. It was about a year ago. He runs a very successful business up in Northern Virginia. This guy couldn't get 15 minutes peace. Even while he's down here on vacation, his phone was just ringing because he has more business than he can even keep up with. Now back to my career for a second. That company I went to work for fresh out of college turns out to be one of the largest companies in the world, one of the oldest companies in the world. And over 22 years, I was able to work my way up to vice president of the largest territory in the USA. I did $160 million in sales a year. 1,600 people had jobs. 1,600 families received paychecks because of the work that I did. And I was able to do that because of Mrs. Reap encouraging me to go to college. And Mrs. Reap was able to encourage me to go to college and study computer science because I chose to go to Scranton Tech. Because I chose to ignore the criticism I got from older folks who told me that I should go to the prep school. So was Scranton Tech the school for dropouts? No. Was it the school for dummies? No. Was it the school for druggies? Well, it wasn't the school for dropouts and dummies. Now, in February of my 22nd year, I received an email, and the email said that the company is doing a voluntary layoff for people who qualify. And Tom Siddons, you qualify for the voluntary layoff. Then the very next sentence said in all caps, if you qualify for this voluntary layoff, we highly suggest you take it. Now, I just got done telling you Scranton Tech was not the school for dummies. I ain't no dummy. I know what that means.
So I took the voluntary layoff and I decided to buy a farm, an old dilapidated farm that needed to be rehabbed and brought up to speed. And I went into it with confidence because I knew I had the skills, even though some of them I hadn't used in 20 years. Some of them I hadn't used since those shop classes back in Scranton Tech, right back in my high school days. I knew I was going to get to blow the dust off of those skills and start using them. And that's how Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm was born. Again, a direct result of my decision to go to Scranton Tech. I'm very grateful for the life I've been able to live so far because of my choice to go to Scranton Tech. And I'm very proud of what my friends have been able to accomplish because of their choice to go to Scranton Tech. If you're a young person looking to start your career, you don't know what you want to do, I'm sure you're getting a lot of advice from people, right? Keep looking around, keep searching, keep trying things out. That's what they did to us at Tech. And when you stumble into something that's a good match for you, you'll know it, you'll feel it. And that's something you can pursue. And if you pursue it, you'll succeed. Now, I haven't written a line of code in 20 years, but I did design a website. And that website is guacfarm.com. GUACFARM.com, guacfarm.com. You can go there and get yourself one of these awesome Sleepy Lizard stickers. I sell these t-shirts on there. They've been selling really good lately. And later on in the year when our tropical fruit ripens, you can get yourself a box of fruit. So you head out to guacfarm.com, GUACFARM.com, and I will see you on the next video.